Hello and welcome to TrackVia's Diving into Citizen Development with Scott Smeester. Today we have Matt Hubbard, our Head of Operational Excellence with TrackVia, and we'll be talking with Scott Smeester. He is the founder and CEO of Cio Mastermind. But before we get started, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. If we can get to that next slide. You are in listen-only mode, so we suggest that you stay in that mode so that everyone can hear the presentation. If you have any questions, please submit them via the chat window. We will have a short Q&A at the end, but anything that we don't get to, we will follow up with those that we don't answer live. This webinar is being recorded and we'll send you a follow-up email within 48 hours with that recording. That's all of the housekeeping that we have, so I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome to all who are watching us. I'm your host, Matt Hubbard, and today I'll be interviewing Scott Smeester, CEO of Cio Mastermind, about citizen development. But before I introduce Scott, I think it's prudent that I first define a couple of terms that we'll be hearing a lot today. So the first term I'd like to define is low code, no code. Many of you may have heard this term. Maybe you heard the acronym LCNC. So what is low code, no code? There are nuances between low code and no code, but for the purposes of today's discussion, let's just group it together into one term, which means a platform through which software solutions are primarily assembled instead of coded. And I want to underscore two things there. Number one is it's a platform. This is like a blank slate. It's like a blank canvas for you to create anything you want. You can create one app, you can create 100 apps, okay, all on the same platform. The second piece that I want to emphasize with low code, no code is that it is for people who aren't professional coders like me, okay? I'm not a professional coder, but I can build some great apps with low code, no code, and that's because I assemble the apps with pre-built widgets. I've got a picture there of some Legos. So think of a low code, no code platform as a very big box of Legos where you take pre-built items and you assemble them into an app, anything that your mind could imagine. Now, what problem does low code, no code solve? Well, for me, as a non-coder and somebody who works on process improvement, I like to use technology to control my processes. Okay, but really mostly what was available to me were spreadsheets, email, and share drives, and they're great. They're very nimble, they're very flexible, but they're not very robust. They don't have good security layers, and they don't really cover workflow very well. At the other end of the spectrum were these big, expensive systems that were very robust, like ERP, CRM, off-the-shelf, purpose-built, or even custom-built solutions, but they were very inflexible, cost a lot, and took a long time. So low code, no code fills that gap. It's both nimble and robust. Now, the second term I'd like to define is citizen development. What is citizen development? You'll often hear the acronym CD. I'm going to read this definition to you, and then I'm going to kind of dive in on three key elements of citizen development. Okay, so citizen development, this is my definition, is a sanctioned program that enables organizations to accelerate innovation by empowering employees to assemble apps through low-code, no-code platforms. Okay, so the three pieces I want to key in on in that definition. The first is sanctioned program. This is not willy-nilly shadow IT. The business just kind of runs off and does something on their own. This is something that is sanctioned by IT. It is a partnership between IT and the business. And we're blessed to have Scott here today because Scott has experience on both the business side and IT, and he can appreciate that the two have to work together. The second piece I want to emphasize is employees. Again, these are non-pro coders. You do not have to know how to be a professional coder to make apps. So citizen development, I know it's a weird term, citizen development. Some people ask me, is that like a nefarious plan to control the citizens by the government? And no, it's not. That is not the case. But it does sound like that. It sounds weird. So the term citizen just means, think of it as an average, everyday citizen, somebody who doesn't have the superpowers of a pro coder. That's why we use the term citizen. And then the development is making apps again on low code, no code platform. So I want to emphasize there are 3 elements of CD, okay? All 3 are necessary to have a successful citizen development program. You need the technology, that's the low code, no code platform that we talked about on the previous slide. You need the people, so those are citizen developers, people who want to improve business operations with technology but don't know how to code. Okay, and then the third thing you need is a process. You need an operating model, a light touch governance operating model that keeps everything running smoothly, minimizing risk, and allowing things to happen at scale. If you don't have one of those 3 elements, it is unlikely that your citizen development program will go well. For example, oftentimes folks will just give technology to their people. Here you go, here's your low code, no code platform. Good luck, right? And then they don't necessarily build the apps to IT's standards. They might miss some security or privacy items, and that's just dangerous. So not having the process would cause some problems. And then there are obviously other problems with not having the technology, like frustrating your people with limited tools, and then not having the people. That's just a waste of money to spend money on technology and process without having the people. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Low code, no code, citizen development. We're going to talk about that a lot today. Enough about the definitions. Let's move on to meeting Scott. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully that'll make the images of me and Scott much larger. Okay, well, Scott, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Matt. Happy to be here.
Great. I'm happy that you're here too, Scott. Scott, I kind of mentioned this earlier. You have a very unique background that allows you to see citizen development from both a business perspective and an IT perspective. I usually see people or meet people who are one or the other, business only or IT only. And that kind of creates some tension. But you somehow have developed expertise in both. Can you tell us about your background and how you obtained that dual nature?
Yeah, actually, so, when I tell people I'm a geek with executive tendencies, that literally is my term, and it's just the best way to describe who I am. The three legs of the chair, or the 3 sides of the triangle, for me are engineering as well. So yes, technology and business, but I got a degree in engineering. And once you go through engineering school, you do nothing but problem solve, and you think in terms of solutions. You're thinking in terms of what would fit this situation. So my degree in civil engineering, along with my love for technology, since I've been a kid, I've been tinkering with technology. I've been programming. I do it now. I'm the guy in my company that's doing the technology. And then business. So when I got out of engineering school, I did pretty much nothing but startups and creating businesses. And usually it was in it was a technology product or service, and it was serving B2B. It was B2B type businesses. My first one was an internet development firm back in '97. We built custom database driven websites and web applications way back then. I got into data backups and data recovery in the early 2000s. Then I went back into programming from 2010 to 2015-ish type of thing. I was on the front end of, so I've been around technology. I love technology. I think about it as an engineer, but I've been building businesses, and I understand the importance of how to put this all together from a business standpoint. And then I saw it a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I started Cio Mastermind, because as somebody who's rising up in the level of technology and my influence and my consulting businesses that I had been running at the time, I just started calling myself a CIO or a CTO. I didn't call myself, whatever you want to call me, sure, I'll be that, right? But really, that's what it was. I was really being a CIO, running business, consulting, telling other executives what to do or what they should do, blah, blah, blah. And I was being underserved. I was being underserved because I couldn't find places where I could actually be the one asking for input from other CIOs. I couldn't find them at networking events. I couldn't really develop great relationships at most of the things that I was at. So I created a forum that is specifically allowed for CIOs and IT executives to come to the table and get meaningful time with other CIOs and CTOs and IT executives who are dealing at the C-level. And so that's what Cio Mastermind is. So put that all together. If that's unique, then great.
That is extremely unique, Scott. I mean, you're an engineer by degree. You have a love for technology since you were young. You started businesses, you've served customers with your technology, and now you've pulled a bunch of technology leaders together for best practice sharing. I mean, that's quite a perspective, and that's why I'm super interested in this discussion today.
Cool. Good.
So citizen development, let's talk about that. You and I met only a few months ago, right? And at that time, you told me that you weren't familiar with the term citizen developer, yet you seem to quickly embrace it. So I'm curious, why? What is it about citizen development that resonates with you?
Well, as you and I have talked about this in the past, when you put a term to it, it was called citizen development. You put a term to something that had already been forming in my head, which is in this day and age with the problem with the talent gap and with the great resignation and all these problems with trying to get developers on task, the natural progression is we are going to have to start lowering the bar. You put a term to it. That's why I was like, oh, there's already a term and there's already a movement. This is great. It's like back when in 2002, 2003, I was introduced to Agile. I had been running that internet development company. We had been doing waterfall projects. We had been taking big deposits on big projects from our clients. And at the end of this project, 3 months down the road, we tried to deliver what we were paid to do, and it never was able, they never accepted it. And then we had to go in this long process of changing and blah, blah, blah. And it really became a head-butting situation. And I come across a friend of mine, I'm going to give him all the praise for this because he's one of the most brilliant men I know is Peter Provost. And he's like, Scott, you should learn about Agile. Let me tell you about Agile development. Now, if you're all Agile people out there, just high level, Agile is this. Agile allows you to do smaller projects with shorter deliverables, working in tandem with the client, and you're not beholden to each other. You're not in this gigantic investment. So it allows you to work together. And when he explained that to me, I'm like, there it is. That's what we need to do. We need to do smaller deliverables. It's easier for them. It's easier for us. We're on track. We're on top of things. And so when you started you gave me the term citizen development, I'm like, that's it. That's what we need. We need the people who are technically minded in our company. You know who they are. They're there. They're usually probably the younger folk a little bit, but not necessarily, because it could be me, right? But I was shadow IT back in the day. I would have found my own technology, and they're out there doing that. Those are the people to hit. Those are the people who want to do their job. And so anyway, that's why it hit home so hard with me.
All right, very good. Well, it sounds to me like when citizen development is done right and not in like a separate, apart from IT, okay? Yeah. But when citizen development is done right, it's a win for both the business and for IT. And in your case, where you were a service provider to customers, to the customer as well. And so I'd like to dive into that. How is it a win for the business and the IT side. But let's start with the business side first. So yeah, what problems does citizen development solve for business folks?
So we're talking about the ideal situation. The ideal situation is that the business has figured out how to leverage non-developers, in creating and developing applications for the business itself. So the business is able to support itself without having to rely on IT only. And so the bottom line is that, the business infrastructure goes faster. It's built faster, and it's built by the people who understand the processes that are deep within the business. So ideally, boy, it really, it moves faster. It's a much more agile, literally agile business, because it's not everything is going through IT.
I can relate to that, Scott. I told you at the beginning that I come from the business side, and I was a process improvement guy, and I would, on paper, improve my processes. This is how it should go. This is how it should flow. This is who should do what in what order. But I needed technology to actually ensure that that happened every time. Just training people, just relying on audits, it was never good enough. But when I went to get a solution built, because I'm not a coder, it either cost way too much, or to your point, took way too long. I just didn't have that time. So I always just like, fine, I'll work with my spreadsheets. They are terrible for workflow, but I'll work with them. Or I'll go find somebody else to do it for me, right? I'll bring in a third party.
Exactly.
With citizen development and low code, no code, I'm able to build something that I understand, because I'm the one who wrote the documentation for this new process, right? I understand it, but I can build it pretty quickly. And the best part is I can be wrong. It's okay, because it's so flexible. Like, I might not get the solution right the first time. And that sounds a little bit like the Agile that you were talking about earlier.
Definitely. I'll add to that is another benefit to the business is controlled risk. You're going to have shadow IT if you're not given the tool, you're not enabling, and by the way, that's your job as a CEO or CIO. You need to give the tools to the people who are doing their jobs. And if not, they're going to find other ways to get their job done. Well, then what do? They go find their own solutions, which is called shadow IT. And well, if you don't have that under control, you're introducing a whole lot of risk, obviously, to your business. And well, at least with citizen development and these low code, no code tools, you can define that. And so the business really benefits from the risk standpoint as well.
That's a good point, because they're not trained to look at data in the same way that IT is. They don't have the same risk mindset. They have a, I got to get my job done mindset. So this helps me do that without the bigger picture of it. Am I causing a privacy risk somewhere else? Am I breaking any governance? Okay, well, you kind of like segueing into the next piece here. So there's definitely benefits for the business, which I agree, because I represent the business side myself. But how about the IT side? Are there benefits to IT for citizen development, or is it just a thorn in their side?
Well, it could be, but we're talking about the ideal situation, right? We're talking about, and we're going to get to how to get to the ideal, but IT benefits because they're getting help that they need. They're backed up. Their project backlog is a mile long. I mean, there's lots of demands. They're just trying to keep the lights on most of the time, much less getting to the actual projects that could be big win, like home run hitter. And so the IT, ideally, if they know how to do this, set this up right, go through PMI, which we're going to talk about, then they have leveraged and they've opened up their ability to deliver. And now they've got guardrails. Okay, I mean, they've got to do this anyway. That's their job. But in this case, they're able to multiply their productivity, literally.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a colleague that I respect very much. He was talking to me about the IT backlog, and he described projects in two buckets. One was the critical few. Okay, those are the items that need to be done to keep the lights on for the business, right? And those tend to be the ones that IT will be able to dedicate resources to. The second bucket is what he calls the useful many. And these are the ones where it's behind the scenes. People like myself who are working in a business unit and trying to keep their operations running efficiently, they could use better tools. It would be useful to have better tools and more efficient, but it's technically not critical to keep the lights on, right? And so they tend to not get the attention, and that bucket of useful many just sits there. It just waits. The business is like, come on, what can we do? That's just not hitting the priority list. Totally understand it. But IT doesn't have those resources necessarily to start hitting the useful many. There's a third bucket that results then, which I'm adding to this model, and I'm calling it the never submitted. So it doesn't even make it to the backlog because the business says, you know what, I can't even get my useful many done. So why add more to the backlog? I'll just figure out a way to do it on my own. Have you seen a similar situation with those three buckets?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you're describing what are the problems of our CIOs. And, you know, I started Cio Mastermind, but I also attend every meeting. I'm in there listening. I'm not contributing anymore because I don't do CIO work as much anymore. When I need to give advice about business anymore, I'll chime in. But for the most part, so I'm sitting there listening, and they're the three biggest problems: talent gap, project backlog, shadow IT. Project backlog is what you're talking about right there. I mean, it's just so long that they have to perform triage, and literally they're just keeping the lights on. So they're not serving the business properly. And so, I mean, if that's all that the IT department is doing and they're not really literally serving the business, I think, you know, if you're an executive out there, you need to look at that. How are you gonna improve your flow, your throughput on your projects based just exactly what you're saying?
Yeah, Scott, before I got to know the IT side, you have the benefit of knowing both sides, but early in my career, I didn't get to know the IT side very well. I thought from just my business perspective. And so I'm saying this tongue in cheek right now, but my perspective was that IT was the department of no. Their motto was, we're IT, we're not happy till you're not happy, right? And that's how I felt. But some of my best friends are in IT, and they've come to explain to me that they don't want to be a disservice to the business. They wish they had more resources to work on projects with us, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And you know why? I mean, so the people in IT are generally driven by technology. And if they have to do the same thing over and over and over again, that's no fun, because we really are creative people. We want to use these new technologies and these vendor solutions that we do learn about, and like, God, that would be a perfect fit. But I need time, I need resources, I need to do that. But gotta go restart the server or move the data again or whatever it is. You know, they're just so busy doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the truth is the digital demand is far greater than the supply of coders, right? It's just, and especially since COVID, the digital demand shot through the roof.
Yeah.
So
and I don't see that changing. I was just thinking about that before. I'm like, literally, like, you know, the real estate bubble that's happening, theoretically that could go down and real estate prices go down. I just don't see the demand for coders and developers going down anytime soon. It will happen someday, but not for a long, I don't think for another 10 years.
Okay, so I mean, what we're describing here is what you said was one of the top 3 problems that you heard from CIOs, which is the talent gap.
Yeah.
So what can be done about that? How is citizen development something that can help with the talent gap?
Well, again, citizen development is leveraging people that you already have in your organization. You know, when done properly, you can, again, multiply your throughput, multiply your productivity, because you're leveraging other resources, non-coder, non-hardcore, expensive, hard to find, hard to keep talent. And not only that, you're actually giving that creative person who's in an organization who is driven kind of by technology tools to be able to build internally. So you're actually opening up, and you're letting a flower blossom type of thing, right? So you know,
that's the first time I've heard it described that way, Scott.
It's all about the flower blossoming, man.
I've always described it as a superpower, but now I'm going to use the analogy of
it's flowers. It's flowers and blossomings.
All right, I'm using it. Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm getting a picture in my head now for the first time. I probably should have thought of this before, but with those 3 buckets I was describing, with the critical few, and this is in the backlog, the critical few, the useful many, and the never submitted. If a company launches a citizen development program that is in partnership with IT, this could allow the IT pro coders to focus on the critical few. That's what we want them doing to the greatest of their ability.
Definitely.
But it opens up opportunity to move forward on the useful many that have been submitted and could optimize our operations.
Correct.
Yeah, is that fair to say?
Well, citizen development can kind of help with both, but let's just say that it would help with the, what did you say, the critical few?
Critical few.
Yeah. Is that the third one, or what's the second one?
No worries. I have a visual for this. I should have probably shown it. But just imagine, like, this is the backlog, and the very top sliver is the critical few. That's all they get to work on, because that's all the resources they have.
Yeah. Well, and IT wants to get to that. They want to make the, and I know this is the good thing about IT. They want to make an impact, and they want to get to those projects for sure.
Oh, well, those are, so just to clarify my model again, the critical few are the top few that they are working on, because that's all the resources they have. And then the useful many, those are the ones that's the large volume of them that just sit there in the backlog and they don't get work done. And because they don't get work done, the business will go find another way to do it, which creates that risk that you were talking about. So if there was a citizen development program where IT did empower their employees, the non-programmers, with a low-code, no-code platform, there would be an avenue for them to tackle those projects that aren't getting done in a safer way than going out and finding a third-party solution or something like that.
Well, that's absolutely it. You know, and so when we originally talked, you and I, Matt, I literally was looking at it from a data perspective. You said, you had brought up the fact that all kinds of people are just building their applications in a spreadsheet. That really got me to think, because I'm like, well, every application really is just a table of data, really, which could be done on a spreadsheet technically, because, you know, data and the relationships between the data could be done, not very good, but it could be done on a spreadsheet. And once I got thinking about that, I'm like, yeah, tons of people are trying to do their business with a spreadsheet. Well, and then on top of that, I know that applications exist now where you can build, like TrackVia, you can build relational database applications all already looks good, feels good, works. Make sure that data, the tables and the relationships are kept. And I was like, that's it. I mean, that's all you need. And if you can, but oh, that's not all you need, I should say. I mean, you need what we're going to be talking about is the actual process, because it can be done wrong. But we haven't gotten to that yet. We're getting there, right, Matt?
Yes, we are. And no, I agree with the essence of what you're saying. Like when I was introduced to low code, no code, I felt like that definition page that I showed at the beginning. It filled the gap. I call it stepping up from spreadsheets. Right. It fills the gap of what the spreadsheets can't do, but still in a very flexible way that is quick and easy for somebody like me to use.
Yep.
Okay, let's pivot to the next part here. So you run a company called Cio Mastermind, okay? And that company, I shouldn't say the company, but the format is IT leaders coming together to discuss challenges that they're having and brainstorm solutions together in a vendor agnostic way. It's a very unique format, right? And so I'm curious, has this crew of IT leaders, your CIO mastermind team, have they discussed citizen development? Have they discussed it as a potential solution to the three problems that you mentioned, talent gap, project backlog, shadow IT?
Well, yeah, well, originally, before I was made aware of the term and what it is, I remember challenges and problems that were related to this, and I remember saying you should check out either low code, no code, or citizen development. I don't know if that term was used or not, I don't recall, but that was more than a year ago, 2 years ago. But since then, hardly any discussion or conversation. Nobody is, even though talent gap and shadow IT and project backlog is talked about in every meeting almost, those haven't been applied so you see, that hasn't been talked about. So recently we did have a meeting where we had some time left before the end of the meeting, and we said we'd like to have kind of an open discussion about citizen development, and we kind of changed up our own format. We have facilitators in our group, but we allowed one of our first members who's been with us since the beginning to actually run this meeting and to ask the questions and to talk and discuss about citizen development. So again, our meetings, we want to make sure that there's just absolutely no bias toward this. So we even took out our own people and we're like, nope, you guys talk about this, and so anyway, yeah, they talked about it. And so what was the end result is there was skeptical optimism. My takeaway is that I really feel like they're not quite educated at this point as well. And so we need to pull together. And so some of the challenges I listed, the quality of the applications, they're concerned about that. They're skeptical, but yeah, maybe this could work. And what they've seen so far is that the quality of the applications haven't really been there. The scalability is kind of the challenge. I know that there's a big issue in the minds of the CIOs about transferability, and then sometimes the maintenance. Maintenance is another issue. So, but like I said, now the optimism part is that they recognize that this problem of the talent gap isn't going away, meaning they're going to have to find other ways of becoming more competitive and more productive, and that's how they're going to be more competitive, by being more productive, literally. And that's why, when we started talking about this, I'm just like, show me the tool, let me see the tool, let me play around with it. You and I know I've built my own apps in TrackVia, and I'm like, yes, anybody can really learn how to, well, not anybody, but the people who need to know how to do this could be done. This could be done. So then we took it, and then that's the feedback that I got from the CIOs.
Okay. So how did you describe it? Skeptical optimism.
Yeah.
So they're optimistic that this is doable, but skeptical because of what they've seen delivered in the past from like the business users weren't making the best apps. You said app quality. And
Right.
so I'm thinking back to the definition that I gave of citizen development. It has to include all three, right? It has to include the technology and the people, but also a process that wraps it up. That process has to include training, it has to include governance, it has to include executive support, etc. So what I'm guessing is that
it has to include
the
adoption.
process piece was missing. Like they, kind of like I said, they were just given this low-code tool, go ahead, make an app, and naturally, the business users didn't make an app that met the expectations of IT because they weren't given those expectations. That's where the process piece comes in. It's going to make things scalable in a safe and effective way.
That's right. Absolutely.
Have you looked into PMI's framework a little bit? And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I took that PMI foundations. And by the way, I mean, I was excited about the technology originally. Well, originally I was excited about just citizen development, the concept of, and how it could work. And then I had to see the technology. Okay, well, let me, prove to me that the actual technology exists, that you could build these applications, drag and drop type applications that keep data in the proper relations that they need to be, safe, secure, blah, 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 right? So, okay, proved, I've been proven that. Then the bigger question, and the big and a very important question is, then how do you roll it out? How does it get adopted within an organization? Because if it's not done right, you're doing more damage than good, because you're setting up for future failure, saying no to it, and even if it was the actual best solution, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for failure later on, because they're not going to want to try it again. Oh, that citizen development thing, we tried that. So anyway, yes, I took the PMI foundations course, and I learned, the best way to do it literally is kind of guerrilla warfare type of thing. Start out small, and not guerrilla warfare, but more like, identify, kind of grow it from organic. That's what I would rather say. More of an organic, you want to start small, and this is, start in little sectors and have it grow up and become something that's of value, where you can show, like in the terms of Agile, a minimal viable product, one that is working. Oh, here's HR. Here's a little thing that HR created, and it's just completely transformed this one thing that they were doing. Now it saves them, like, oh my God, 20 hours a month. Really,
Yeah.
when you start looking at that kind of stuff, and then it's like, oh, okay. And now they're building this new one because Sally or Joe or whoever knows how to use this application. Now they're doing this. And then, okay, well, since that's working so well, let's try to duplicate that same effort. Let's get Jenny or Craig over on this side, over in whatever, accounts receivable or something like that. Maybe they could be doing this and get them going. Then, so anyway, yeah, highly recommend going through the PMI Foundations course just to understand the basics and how you can actually roll this out and see it. I think that for a lot of people, it'll just open up a huge just flood of ideas on how to actually, what they could do and how it's going to offset and really help their productivity.
I agree. You're keying in on my favorite part of PMI's methodology, and that's called their maturity model. Their maturity model is 5 stages, and it starts simply with just discovery. All you're doing is like you're verifying, is this legit, on one use case, right? Very simple use case with one person. And you reflect on it, you learn from that. Was it good? Was it good enough to try another experiment, which moves you into stage 2, experimentation, right? But then you kind of apply some of the things that you learned during the discovery phase, but now you're experimenting with a few more use cases and a few different people. And you're reflecting in an experimental scientific way on each one of those items until you get to the point where you're like, this is legit. I'm ready to go to the C-suite and ask if we can formally adopt citizen development as a way of life here. So that's stage 3 is adoption.
Yep.
And by the way, I didn't intend for this to be a plug on PMI, but I've always got my PMI citizen development book here. All of this is in here. But what I'm describing is just they're one little sliver. It was my favorite part. So third part is adoption. And you're going to go to the C-suite. You're going to ask, can we adopt this as a way of life? If the answer is yes, okay, now you've got the executive support. Now things start to get real serious because now you have to develop your light touch governance, your boundaries, your best practices, your operating model, so that you can scale, which is the next stage, scaling. And then the next stage is called innovating. I'd like to change it to culture because it's when this is just kind of the way things work. In fact, a buddy of mine, he describes citizen development someday will not be called citizen development. It'll just be called work. It's just how we get things done.
Exactly. Well, that's a really good point because here's what work is now. Work is mostly 80% of companies are moving data from over here to data to over here. And we are stuck in our computers and living with the machines because we are just trying to move data. Well, I see citizen development and the low code, no code together as you're right. Now we can actually concentrate on our processes. How can we serve people better?
I love it. I love it. Okay, I think I've kind of gone off script here just a little bit, and so I want to get us back for a time's sake.
I do that, don't I, Matt?
You and I both. Like seriously, I can jibber jabber about citizen development for hours, but we have an audience that we need to be aware of.
Oh, that's right.
Let's do this before we move on to the Q&A portion of this. I want to I want to find out, like, maybe some people are now leaning in and saying, geez, I'd be interested in starting a citizen development journey, or at least starting my discovery of citizen development. So what would be your advice to a person or a company who wants to begin a citizen development journey?
Well, I would say that it kind of depends on the person and what they're driven by. But I definitely think that it would. So I'm like a tech guy. I wanted to see the tech. I also understand, though, that the process is really important. So I really needed to see what PMI, and I already knew about PMI. Like, they're already a very respectable voice in the industry, also vendor agnostic and unbiased from that standpoint. So, overall, I would say look at the process of what citizen development is, how you would roll it out, why it's important. So check out PMI. And then if you want to know also about the tool, because I want to know where the tools now are, what does this look like? Try TrackVia, try something else. Talk to you, actually. That's been my suggestion. Talk to you because you know of a lot of different tools that could work. Obviously, you're with TrackVia, and it's the one that I feel like really kind of bridges the largest span, literally. But try the technology, try it out, see what it's like to go through, or a demo maybe, but how you actually literally can build safe applications, and how easy it is. And you just need to find a little bit of technical people, and they can learn how to do this.
It's funny, Scott. Unknowingly, you're describing my process that I go through with what I call my citizen development students. And it's just something that has naturally occurred. So we start with somebody raises their hand and says, I think there's something here. I'd like to dip my toe in the water of citizen development. And so I start them with the Citizen Development Foundation course. And by the way, anybody who's attending this webinar today, we'll be sure to get you a free code to that foundation course if you want. We'll mention that at the end. But it's just a 90-minute course, and it gives you the framework that PMI is recommending and a language to talk about it. And then I have a conversation with the person who just took that course afterwards. And we talk about like what resonated with you, what do you disagree with, what do you want to try to apply? And it's a really good, healthy conversation, and people are usually leaning in at that point even further. And initially, I was planning to move them to the next course, which was the Citizen Development Practitioner course, which is much more involved. But what I found is that before they go to the Practitioner course, they're like, I want to get my hands on the keyboard. I want to see this low code, no code stuff, right? Like I buy into the philosophy of citizen development, but I got to see low code, no code. That's you, and that's almost 100% of the other folks. And so that's what I've started to pivot to, is we do a quick demo of the TrackVia platform, but then we let them sign up for a free trial, and then they start poking around. And usually what happens is they say, before I do this for my business, for my company, let me try to make an app for myself in a safe way. And they make it really quickly. And then they go, wow, my business could use this too. Let me now talk to my business and see if we can make a quick proof of concept or prototype for something in my business. And then it just kind of goes from there. Then it moves on to the Practitioner course and the Citizen Development Business Architect course. But it's all in that, just start learning, dabble small, right, with something that is low risk, low cost, and then grow from there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I guess I was asking you for your advice. Something that obviously we're talking about starting small, learning, getting your hands on the technology. The only other thing that I would add to advice is just remember, citizen development, it's not just the technology, it's not just the people. You got to have that process piece for it to scale successfully. And so looking back at that different definition I gave, do not forget about all three elements. I've seen too many times people think it's about the technology and they just buy the technology and say, there we go, now we're good to go. No, you're not. There's
definitely, like I said, there's definitely a way to do it wrong, and you don't want to do it wrong.
Got it. All right.
Because that'll pay it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we do have a couple questions, if you don't mind taking some.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's move to the Q&A portion. Give me a second to share my slide. I've got a Q&A slide here. Let me know when you guys can see. Michelle, if you give it a shout out.
We got that. Absolutely. And as always, guys, Matt and Scott are open for questions too. If we don't get to them, you can email Matt or you can email us, Scott. You can find our TrackVia website. Scott also has a website at CIOmastermind.com. So feel free to check any of those out. But yeah, we have a question from Ian Gray. He says, do you think CD improves the culture in organizations by creating greater unity and psychological safety for employees in their jobs? I know that's a big one.
Yeah, it is. Hi, Ian. I know Ian. Ian, I shared a post of his recently. It was a great post about, if you guys have seen it, it's on LinkedIn. Check it out. It was about how he kind of discovered low code 30 years ago. The concept was existing 30 years ago, where tools were available for non-programmers to make their own apps, not in the same way they are today, right? Obviously 30 years later, but he was turned on and excited about what low code could do 30 years ago. So thank you for that Ian. I resonated with that post very much. Does it change? I think I'll answer that just from my own personal experience. Okay, the answer for me was heck yes. It's exciting. It is really fun. So you've got, I did this, I learned about low code 10 years ago. And after I built the first app, which the first app I built, I did it in 8 hours, and it saved me 200 hours of work each year. So that's a 25x payback on time, just out of the gate. And others around me noticed. They're like, wow, that's great. Can you teach me to do that? Because I see how much more productive you are. I would like to do that in my space too. And so, yeah, I was like happy to. So we just taught them. And what happened over the course of like a couple of years is I never even asked for it. People just came, and we formed a team of about 5 to 7 citizen developers who got together every week, shared best practices with enthusiasm, because it was always, yeah, we're no longer suffering with our work because we were able to build this app. And I will say that the relationships also, that was in the business, the relationships with IT got better because we weren't then taking those useful many apps that weren't the critical few to IT and pressing them to build them for us. IT did have to validate the security of the platform and make sure they were comfortable with it and give us some light touch guardrails. But for the most part, boy, we started to see team unity grow because of what we're able to accomplish together. People like to do good things.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Scott, do you have anything that you'd like to say on that? I know you're kind of just touching into CD, but do you see anything that you feel would be like creating greater unity, or even he touched on this idea of psychological safety. Do you have anything that you might touch on that?
Well, when everyone's happy, the culture is better. If things are moving, right? If things are moving, if you feel like you're doing important, that's good for the whole overall psychological part of an organization. Now, unity, sure. I mean, I'd say yes, because why not, right? But the fact is that I'm kind of early in the in my learning and understanding of this. I have not seen a whole lot of it rolled out yet because I've only been checking it out for the last 6 months or diving into it. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot on the culture part of it.
That's fair. This one though, I think maybe you might be able to touch on, and I know Matt, you would too. CIOs don't always have the time to implement things. So is there key things that people should look for, CIOs or IT professionals should look for to identify a champion if they want to start implementing citizen development?
Well, absolutely. No, you're right. A CIO is not really the person that should be implementing things, but they need to drive a vision. They need to drive success within the organization from technology. They do need to be the advocate of something like this. So they need to take the time to understand it and learn it. And then, yes, find the champions. I mean, any leader is supposed to do that. Any leader is supposed to find the vision, move the vision forward, and then find other people to actually roll it out. So yes, you want to find the champions. Matt, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and then the characteristics of the champion. I mean, number one, I usually qualify people with 3 things. Let's see if I can remember the 3 things. Skill, will, and support, okay? Do they have the skill to do what we're asking them to do? Do they have the will, and are they supported to do it? And so Scott, I think, just covered the support piece. You need the CIO to provide the environment and the permission to pursue such a thing. For the champion themselves, more than skill, I would say will is the one that matters. Like, are they obsessed with improving things and leveraging technology to do so? If they are, they will get the skill to make it happen. So will is the most important. Within the business, I think you need a champion on the IT side and on the business side to partner together. So that champion on the business side needs to be like, yeah, probably like a process improvement person, continuous improvement, project manager sort of person. But again, they want to have the passion for the technology. And then a comparable person on the IT side, some sort of person of influence who has the time to develop this program. And PMI calls him the Citizen Development Business Architect, the champion.
Perfect. That's great. And I think you guys have covered quite a bit here. I appreciate your time and just outlining these problems and how citizen development and low code and no code can help address those major key problems. I don't have any other questions that I'm seeing online here. So I think our next steps too, if our call to action here is, if you're interested, if you're willing, if you just want information and you want to start beginning your citizen development journey and getting that information, exactly like we said, identify a champion in your organization, and maybe that champion is you. But in that, you can take PMI's 90-minute CD Foundation course. Please contact Matt, because he can give you a free course code for that. And then experience low code, no code. So go to our TrackVia website. There's a button there on top that you can get started right away with a free trial, and you can get your hands in it and mess around and make your own apps right away. And as a CEO, if you have interest in networking with other CIOs or getting information or even exploring this further with other CIOs and IT professionals, contact Scott. He has created the Cio Mastermind Group just specifically for this. So you can go to his website at ciomastermind.com, or even if you're on your phone, or if you have a phone, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you directly to a Calendly link. You can schedule time with him directly and he'll get you set up. So we totally appreciate everybody's time today. We hope you found value out of this. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you, Scott, for joining us today and having this discussion. And we hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you.